Benchmarks for Science Literacy by Jenna Guzin.
Alyssa Burke,
and Amber Dale.
What are the benchmarks for science literacy? The benchmarks are part of something called Project 2061. Project 2061's benchmarks are statements of what all students should know or be able to do in science, mathematics, and technology by the end of grades 2, 5, 8, and 12. Benchmarks is a companion report to Project 2061's first publication, Science for All Americans, also known as SFAA. Let's talk about the history of benchmarks for science literacy. In 1989, 6 school districts teams were formed around the nation to rethink the K-12 curriculum and to look at other ways of achieving the literacy goals of the SFAA. A common set of benchmarks were developed after 4 summers and 3 academic years. These benchmarks were reviewed and critiqued by hundreds of elementary, middle, and high school teachers, along with administrators, scientists, mathematicians, engineers, historians, and experts on learning. The benchmarks look somewhat like a textbook. It is organized into chapters 1 through 12. Is the benchmarks: 13, the origin of benchmarks; 14, issues in language; 15, the research base; and 16, beyond benchmarks. Each chapter corresponds to the Science for All Americans. At the beginning of each chapter, there is a quotation from the introduction section of each chapter in SFAA. Then there are overall comments on the ideas to be learned in the chapter along with general terms. Also mentioned are the kinds of student experiences that would foster learning. Each section has section introductions that comment on pacing over grade levels, clarification of ideas, and common difficulties in learning.
Each section is broken down into grade spans. Though these are only approximate, they could also be referred to as primary or early elementary. At the end of each grade span, there is a statement regarding what the students should know at the end of each grade span. The grade spans are K through 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. Here is an example of how the chapters are set up and laid out. Chapter 4 is about the physical setting. The sections are the universe, the earth, processes that shape the earth, structure of matter, energy transformations, motion, and forces of nature. Section A of Chapter 4 is about the universe. Let's look at the grade span of K through 2. This states that by the end of 2nd grade, the students should know that there are more stars in the sky than anyone could easily count, but they are not scattered evenly, and they are not all the same in brightness and color. The sun can be seen only in the daytime, but the moon can be seen sometimes at night and sometimes during the day. The moon looks a little different every day, but looks the same again about every 4 weeks.
Here you can see what the benchmarks are: the nature of science, the nature of mathematics, the nature of technology, the physical setting, the learning environment, the human organism, the designed world, the mathematical world, historical perspectives, common themes, and habits of mind. Why are the benchmarks of science literacy important? Well, they can be used to explore the concept of science literacy in relations to instructions in the early elementary, upper elementary, middle, and high school grades. They can also be used to gauge how well a K-12 curriculum addresses education for science literacy. Researchers can also use benchmarks to identify important topics for investigation. How can we use this when we are preparing science lessons? Well, first, it's important to know that benchmarks are meant to be used along with the SFAA. Using the benchmarks, you can gauge where your students should be after they are finished with that section or lesson. The benchmarks also give you different activity ideas for each grade span, along with what helps foster their learning. You can use some of the suggestions, compare your ideas to those listed. You can also use this to see what is appropriate for each grade level.